Hello, my name is Oscar Quevedo. I have been involved in the grape growing and port wine production for about 12 years. My family, that has been for already 5 generations, based in the Douro Valley, growing grapes and making port. Today we are going to talk about the different ways of aging port wine. We can age it in bottle or we can age it in oak. They are going to produce different styles, different colors, different aromas and flavors. Ruby ports are young and fresh. The aromas are going directly towards blackberries, cherry notes, but they can also have a lot of depth and concentration. Ruby ports tend to be bottled between the 2nd to the 4th year after the harvest. We want them to have the freshness, the youth flavors that we get from fresh crushed grapes. Ruby ports can also age in oak containers for a short period of time. Once port is produced, there's a lot of tiny solid elements that are still fluctuating with the liquid. It's the cold temperatures that the port suffers in the winter, and in the Douro Valley we have winters that are cooler, that are going to slowly bring down those solid parts to the bottom. In terms of the ruby ports, it's a style that has different types. We have the classic entry-level fine ruby port. Late bottle vintage is one of those that also it is in the ruby category. And the flagship of the ruby ports, which is the vintage port. The style of ruby port that is the best of all is vintage port. It's the one that is going to age for and develop and actually improve a lot for many, many decades. And it's because of the aging in the bottle that vintage port keeps the fresh notes, those primary notes that it got from the harvest. The bottle is closed with natural cork. Natural cork is composed of about 80% of oxygen. So the migrations of oxygen that happen towards the port are going to develop a little bit the port without oxidizing it at all. Vintage port goes to the bottle between the 2nd and the 3rd year after the harvest. It will keep the dark red color for many, many years. Vintage port always has sediment because it's bottled and filtered. The sediment is going to increase as it ages for a longer period of time, so be careful. Decant your bottle before you serve it. Vintage port is not produced every single harvest. We need special conditions. We need the weather to collaborate a lot with the grape growers, and we need the winemaker also to be inspired. It's produced in very small quantities. We are actually just selecting the best of the best grapes that turn into the best ports. We look for aging potential, for a lot of balance, a lot of structure and body, all balanced in what would be a perfect port. And then 2-3 years after the harvest, we are going to put it in the bottle, and we kind of forget it because we don't really know when we are going to drink it. Vintage port was traditionally produced 3 times, 4 times a decade. Nowadays we see more regular declarations, but the volumes are also smaller nowadays. The winemaker feels that he's being judged after the vintage port that he's producing, but that is going to take decades because it's the port that is going to tell us how the winemaker performed, but we need to wait and see how the vintage matures. Tawny ports get their name from the color that port takes when it ages in barrel for a long period of time. They have a medium brown color. After several decades, they start getting more into the lighter browns, amber colors. Eventually, they start getting green hints. The tawnies can be divided into 2 different styles. The winemaker can decide to keep the port from a certain harvest, from a certain vintage, separate, which is the case of colheita, or Instead, he may believe that a blend of different vintages is going to produce a more homogeneous, complex, rich port. Those port produces we call ports with indication of age: 10, 20, 30 or 40 years old Tony ports. This port, by law, could be bottled 7 years after the harvest. So in 2005 it could go to bottle. But it doesn't have to go after the 7th year, it can go anytime when the winemaker decides. Tonys or rubies? It is up to you to decide. I like my Tonys with a book, with a movie. I like my rubies to stretch the conversations among friends. Pick one and enjoy. Have fun, and I hope to see you soon.